All right, class, let's move on to part number 4. This one has to do with the digestive system. And here's the approximately 9 parts or so of the digestive system. Go ahead and pause the video or look at the PowerPoint and read just about all of this. This is really a great figure, and it shows just about everything that I really want you to know about the digestive system, but I'll go through these part by part. So, starting with the mouth, this is where digestion begins. So, mastication or chewing, that's what we're doing there. We also perceive taste through like our kind of gustatory system or your tongue, and there's different parts of it that are more sensitive to umami, sweet, sour, and so on and so forth. We also have saliva and different enzymes and mucus membranes within our mouth, and these start uh, digestion more or less. So there's two particular enzymes that I want you to know about. So salivary amylase is one of the big ones for digesting starch or carbohydrate. So salivary amylase is amylase AMYLASE if you want to look that up. There's also another enzyme called linguinal, kind of meaning tongue, lipase or LIPASE. So both of those are linguinal lipase. That's to aid and start breaking down fats. So in the mouth, we begin digestion, and the uh, carbohydrates and fats are what we're actually starting to burn, or not to burn, to start to break down in the mouth. So we aren't actually breaking down protein into amino acids in the mouth. That actually starts in the stomach. Let's look at the next part, the esophagus. So after we chew it, it starts going down our mouth into, the larynx, pharynx, and so on and so forth. We don't want it going into the trachea. So that's really in the esophagus. This is just to lubricate with mucus, move forward to the stomach, and there's peristaltic waves going on, uh, which peristaltic waves, sorry, I went through just a touch too fast right there. Peristaltic waves, what that is, that those are just muscle contractions of, well, smooth muscle to kind of push the food bolus along. So the esophagus, it's really just a long tube. And if you look at that picture right there, there's the epiglottis. And that's a flap that folds down over the trachea during swallowing to, make sure that that the food doesn't go down your air pipe. We do have a lower esophageal sphincter, which is really just uh, it almost like a barrier controlling where if the food can go from the esophagus into the stomach. And I wanted to make a little comment about heartburn really quick. So the lower esophageal sphincter, which it's called the gastro esophageal sphincter or the cardiac sphincter. And whenever it doesn't close the pathway between the esophagus and the stomach very well, then we can get some of the hydrochloric acid or very acidic environment of the stomach, and it can come up into the esophagus. And that would be a burning sensation that you would be feeling. Um, so just something to note about that. That's kind of a dysfunction in that sphincter is working. I mean, it is somewhat normal, but yes. Now let's move on to the stomach. So different sphincters control passage of food through the gastrointestinal tract. The size of the stomach, it's actually approximately 4 cups or it can hold up to 4 cups or about a quart of like volume. The gastric juices, so collectively, well, the word gastric just means stomach. So the juices within the stomach are mostly water, hydrochloric acid, and other various enzymes. Um, Now, the stomach, it has mucus, lining the stomach, and this protects the stomach cells, the gastric cells, from uh, all of these different gastric juices, hydrochloric acid in particular, so that it doesn't digest itself. And in many ways, the stomach is kind of a holding tank. Now, it can well hold food for a fairly not a super long period of time, but it will allow the contents of your stomach to uh, be emptied into your small intestine, like over the course of 1 to 4 hours or so. It's just kind of a holding tank. Now, in your stomach, there's a formation of something called chyme. So that's a watery mixture of partially digested food released by the stomach into the intestines. So the acidic environment starts to break down, many of the different like contents of what we eat, and really protein digestion begins in the stomach through uh, numerous different enzymes that I don't care if you know. So there's different proteases like trypsin, chymotrypsin, and uh, different things like that. But that's really neither here nor there. But protein is start beginning to be broken down in the stomach. Now, granted, nothing's being absorbed yet. So in the stomach, there is um, uh, different things that actually prevent um, uh, like auto digestion, so digestion of the uh, like stomach cells, the gastric cells. So one of it being like a thick layer of mucus protects it. Um, Also, the production of certain enzymes. It'll kind of slow down the production of uh, acid or hydrochloric acid to prevent it from digesting itself. Just it's not really something to worry about too much. Um, Next, I wanted to make a comment about the higher the fat content of meal, the slower that it leaves the stomach. So whenever I said a second ago that the contents are emptied into the small intestine over the course of 1 to 4 hours, that's a fairly wide range of time, and the higher the fat content of whatever you're eating, say like peanut butter, for example, that will be digested rather slowly. So if you ever want energy more quickly, reducing the amount of fat that you consume would help in that, so that it can get through your stomach a little bit faster. And here's just a little bit of a diagram of various things going on within the stomach. I'm not going to go over it too much. Um, Next, let's talk just a little bit about stomach acid. So, stomach acid, it destroys the activity of protein, and actually the acidic environment activates numerous enzymes that aid in the breakdown of protein into amino acids so that um, we can uh, actually absorb them in the small intestine later on. So, something just to talk about really quick, enzymes, hopefully this is a review. They're just protein-based substances that enhance digestion by making chemical reactions more likely to occur or happen. So hopefully that's nothing new to you. Um, so stomach acid, it does partially digest dietary protein, and it also assists in calcium absorption. So if Well, and here I'll make one more comment. It makes dietary minerals soluble for absorption. So the reason I'm talking about this a little bit, if anyone has ever taken Tums or like calcium carbonate, for example, that can get into your stomach and actually reduce how acidic it is, make it more alkaline or more basic, so to speak. And if you chew Tums a lot, and one of my older brothers and my mother actually consume it a fair bit to try to prevent heartburn, say. And it does work for that, but it also seems to hurt or decrease the ability for stomach acid to do its job in terms of digestion and breaking down uh, proteins and absorption of calcium and so on and so forth. So there's just a comment on that. If you're using Tums or calcium carbonate for heartburn, just try to not use it too frequently. Here, I just want to define peristalsis really quick. So it's just muscular movement of materials through the gastrointestinal tract. Um, and this is not under our voluntary control. So we'll have, say, like a food mass going through the gastrointestinal tract, and we will just peristaltically contract and push it on down. So like there will be a contraction right here, a little bit of relaxation, it goes through, contraction, relaxation, contraction, just moving it right along. Hopefully that makes some sense. Now let's talk about the small intestine. This is where um, a lot of things are digested and absorbed, really. Um, So it is approximately 10 feet long. It's got some folded walls and some villi, which just uh, their anatomical structure more or less provides a very large surface area so that we can absorb a lot of food. Now, the small intestine is actually broken up into three different parts, so to speak. So the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum are the three of their. Just look that up. You could Google that really quick. The three different parts of the small intestine. Um, if you want a little bit more on that, I won't talk about it or assess you on it too much. There are absorptive cells in the small intestine. So absorption, it'll go through what are called enterocytes, or the food that we're consuming. It will go through enterocytes to actually get into the bloodstream, and then all of the things that we've digested and broken down, they will get into the bloodstream and we'll deliver them to our liver, various tissues, all of that. There is rapid cell turnover in the small intestine. That's that's important for many reasons. It's actually one of the most rapid places of like cellular turnover in the body. So that's just something for you to know going forward. Now, here's another thing. Um, there's various enzymes that work to break down food or macronutrients. Um, and certain enzymes work really well in the stomach, and other enzymes work really well in the small intestine. So, overall, the stomach is very acidic, and the small intestine is a little bit more basic or alkaline. So, the enzymes that work really well in the stomach don't work so well in the small intestine, and it goes the other way as well. Um, So moving on just a little bit. So the small intestine, uh, you could look over this figure if you want to. I really want to talk about the kind of four different ways of nutrient absorption, like how we're actually absorbing through the enterocytes. So Firstly, there's something called passive absorption, which is when a nutrient moves from an area of higher concentration to an absorptive cell where the concentration is lower. And this is frequently called passive diffusion. Next, there's facilitated diffusion or facilitated absorption, and which there's some type of, say, like uh, transport protein in an enterocyte where it will make a certain nutrient easier for it to pass on through. There's also active absorption, and really all I wanted you to know about this is that it requires energy. Um, there's also phagocytosis and pinocytosis, which literally just means like engulfing of compounds for phagocytosis and liquids for pinocytosis to get on through into the bloodstream. So here's kind of just a little bit of a picture of it. So uh, number one being passive diffusion, two being facilitated diffusion, three being active absorption, and four being phago and pinocytosis. Um, Next, let's just talk a little bit about the large intestine. So, indigestible food materials actually make it to here. So, say like if you're eating meat, a lot of collagen. If you're eating a lot of vegetables, fiber gets on through to here. Now, unlike the small intestine, there are no villi or enzymes to help in breakdown um, or really absorption. Now, we do absorb many things. Um, I'm not going to talk about mucus producing cells. We do absorb many things in the large intestine, mostly water and different minerals. Um, Next, let's talk just a little bit about like bacteria. So there are, gosh, we have various bacteria, or another term is gut flora. That this is, it's kind of all the rage right now, and it probably will be for many years in nutrition research. So what's happening with like probiotics? So if anyone has ever eaten yogurt, probiotics are just living bacteria that seem to help us digest certain things. Um, Now, what prebiotics are frequently soluble fiber that the probiotics are actually eating. So just to break down these words a little bit, biotic really just means bug. So pre meaning before, and pro meaning I don't know, like uh, kind of positive in a way, but not really. Um, Probiotics are really just uh, bacteria living within your large intestine, and prebiotics are things that these bacteria eat. So just so that we have some terms, there's certain prebiotics, not, I'm sorry, there's certain probiotics that are typically looked upon as being good. So if you ever hear these terms, um, bifidobacteria or lactobacilli, those are typically viewed as being positive. Um, so if you're ever taking like a probiotic, I might look for terms like that, like bifido or lactobacilli and things like that. So here, let's talk about different nutrients that are like actually absorbed in these different compartments. So overall, the stomach, there's not a lot of absorption. So a little bit of alcohol and some water. So the small intestine, that really gets most things. That's the primary place where we like absorb different nutrients. So um, calcium, magnesium, iron, and other minerals, glucose or carbohydrate. amino acids are protein, fats, most vitamins, um, water, most of it, and the rest of alcohol. Now, the large intestine, this is really just where we uptake sodium, potassium. Uh, there are some fatty acids, very short chain fatty acids are actually absorbed in the large intestine, but that's about it. And water is absorbed there. Um, Next, let's just touch a little bit on um, uh, the the rectum. So your stool or feces, that's really just a mass of like uh, fiber, bacteria, like sloughed off intestinal cells that kind of just fell off different parts in the intestine. Um, and it just really passes through. Once it shows up in the rectum or anus, that does seem to trigger elimination, and well, and then the opening of the anal sphincters. That's how you go to the bathroom. Um, Now, I would go back and I would look at that first figure, and we'll we'll move on to part 5 here very soon.